Recording in progress.
I'd like to call to order this workshop meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners. I would note that all commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioners Pine and Napper, both of whom are excused. Are we missing anybody? Okay. All right. They're both excused. The board did meet in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss matters of personnel and real estate. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence, and I would ask us to lead the pledge by Commissioner Jody Rubarchak. Welcome, everybody, to what we all hope will be one of the last meetings in Holtzman Elementary. We'll get to an update on that later in the meeting, I hope. Betsy. We'll begin with petitions, complaints, suggestions by members of the public. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share with the board tonight? All right. Hearing none. We'll go into some approval of the minutes from our April 14th Board of Commissioners regular meeting. Is there a motion?
I'd like to so move. Mr. President, approval of the minutes of the April 14th meeting.
Moved and seconded by Commissioner Falona. Any comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is recognitions and presentations, and just to kind of set the stage for this. This is an idea by Manager Probolka, and to be honest with you, I think it's a breath of fresh air. Before us are two draft proclamations proposing to recognize both our men and women in blue, the police department, and all the support staff, along with members of our Public Works Department. They're nationally set aside weeks in May, and we try to recognize our employees and thank them for what they do, but to the extent that we can do it in a formal, official way, I think is always a good thing. And Manager Probolka will be putting together some ideas along with his staff to formally recognize and spread the news, involve commissioners in an appreciation events involving both entities. So with that, the first one up is presentation of Township Board of Commissioners declaring the week of May 15th to May 21st as Police Week in Susquehanna Township. Mr. Hisrow, do you want to say anything before Mr. Fleming?
To make a motion? Sure, I'd like to so move in honor of my favorite president, John F. Kennedy, who I dedicated my public career because of his presidency. I'd like to move approval of the proclamation of the Township Board of Commissioners declaring the week of May 15th to the 21st to be Police Week in Susquehanna Township.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Engel. And Commissioner Fleming, would you do us the honor?
Absolutely, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Proclamation of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners declaring the week of May 15th to May 21st to be Police Week in Susquehanna Township. Whereas National Police Week in the United States was created to honor and recognize the sacrifice and contributions made by police officers in communities of all sizes, and whereas National Police Week, held each year in May, was first celebrated in 1962 through a proclamation issued by President John F. Kennedy, and whereas our community will always appreciate and commend police officers and honor the risks they take every day to uphold the law and protect the safety of the public, and whereas the Board of Commissioners and residents of Susquehanna Township recognize the pioneering community policing strategies employed by the Susquehanna Township Police Department to better serve, instill mutual trust, camaraderie, and positive relationships, and celebrates the celebrate the rich diversity and cultural heritage that makes our community thrive. And whereas the Susquehanna Township Police Department's dedication to the highest standards and principles of law enforcement is further demonstrated by their accredited status under the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through May 21st to be 2022 Police Officers Week in Susquehanna Township, and encourages all residents to join the township in the recognition of the sacrifices made by the police officers of Susquehanna Township and those around the country to make our community safe. Proclaim this 28th day of April 22 by the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners. That concludes the proclamation, Mr. President.
Thank you. Nicely done. Does anybody have any comments before we take a vote? Anything they'd like to add? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the proclamation? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you. The second one that I mentioned is proclamation whereby the board would establish the same week. For some reason, it's the same week this year. Public Works Week in Susquehanna Township. I would ask that Commissioner Engel read it, but is there a motion ahead of time to approve the proclamation? So moved by Commissioner Rothrock. Second by Commissioner Fleming. Mr. Engel.
Yes, Mr. President. A proclamation of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners declaring the week of May 15th to May 21st to be Public Works Week in Susquehanna Township. Whereas public infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to the health, safety, and well-being of the people of this nation. And whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedication of public works professionals representing all levels of government, who are responsible for and must design, build, operate, and maintain the transportation, water supply, wastewater systems, public buildings, and other facilities essential to serve our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Susquehanna Township to gain knowledge and maintain ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works, first responders, and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the American Public Works Association has designed the week of May 15th through May 21st to be National Public Works Week and announced the theme of Ready and Resilient in order to emphasize that public works crews are always ready to serve their communities, as resilient and as ever in their abilities to pick themselves up off the ground after encountering challenges. Now, therefore, the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through May 21st to be 2022 Public Works Week in Susquehanna Township, and urges all township residents to join the Board of Commissioners in recognizing the substantial contributions public works employees have made to our national health and welfare. Proclaimed this 28th day of April, 2022, Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add? All right, hearing none, is there, we did have a motion, right, in a second, so thank you very, very much. All right, there's properly, it's been properly moved and seconded. No other discussion. All those in favor of the proclamation? And opposed? Motion carries. All right, thanks everybody. And thanks Manager Proboka for bringing those to our attention. Appreciate it. Traffic study requests, Schoolhouse Lane traffic study results. Mr. Proboka?
Yes, thank you. Chief Martin was called away on assignment, so I'll just do a quick review of this. It's really just presented this evening for information only, but at the request of the board from a prior evening, an assessment was done on the 3400 block of Schoolhouse Lane to determine whether traffic calming measures were warranted based on some speed concerns that were expressed. An officer was assigned to conduct the detail, And provided with your agenda is a summary of that review, including an analysis of the geometry of the road segment, as well as a description of the crash history observed in the area and the speed data that was observed. In short, the recommendation from the police department is that no traffic calming measures are warranted in the area for speed mitigation. However, it is recommended that that line striping or line paintings be made on the road in this segment to indicate that the speed limit is 25 miles an hour for motorists. So we have these in other locations in the township. They're typically adopted by ordinance. Unless there are any concerns expressed this evening, I'll plan to present an ordinance to the board for consideration to add those markings on the road and at that segment at an upcoming meeting.
So you're looking for authorization to advertise for intention to adopt an ordinance?
We could do that this evening. Sure.
Whichever way you
forgive
wanna
me.
go.
I don't. This is the protocol. I'm still getting a little bit accustomed to. So if it's a typical custom of the board to take action to authorize the advertisement of the ordinance, then I suppose that would be appropriate and done for May 12th.
Mr. Miller? I mean, can it be done administratively? Okay. Is there a motion?
Question. Go ahead. Yes, so Dave, did we have any data as to when this kind of intervention was implemented in other places in the township? Did they actually reduce accidents or speed or both?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can pass that along to Chief Martin and see if I can follow up with a response at the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, so again, solicitor, we'd have to approve a motion to advertise an ordinance and intention to adopt. Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Engel, second by Commissioner Filota. Any discussion?
This is just painting on the roadway.
Right.
Am I right? I don't know if we need, I think we need an ordinance to put a stop sign or signage
I
up.
read
I'm not
that.
sure we need an ordinance to do painting on the roadway. I was just asking the question.
That's why
I have no objection to it, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I know for stop signs and other traffic control devices, calming devices, we've. Fair enough. All right. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Anything else, Mr. Proboka, on traffic study?
No, sir.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to add in terms of traffic studies at this point? Suggest? Discuss? Hearing none. And if so, we have commissioner comments at the end. Okay. Consent agenda. We only have one item on the agenda, and that is the unfortunate resignation of Melissa Foltz. Tomorrow would be her last day. She's moving on to not bigger and better things, because I think she'd really like to stay in Susquehanna Township, but closer things. I mean, she was offered an opportunity that's about less than 5 minutes from her house, where this is pretty north of a 45-minute drive. So, I'd like to thank her for her time and tenure here and her acquiring notary public status, and which has been quite helpful to staff. And her cheery hello when she comes in the door. So anyway, the consent agenda contains the resignation of Melissa Foltz. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Rothrock. Seconded by Commissioner Rabarchik. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is action on ordinances, resolutions, etc. Number one up is the engagement of Timothy Horseman, McNeese, Wallace, and Norick as bond counsel for Susquehanna Township and the Susquehanna Township Authority. Mr. Pabolka, you want to tee this up?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. The Susquehanna Township Authority is in the process of considering a $10 million bank loan or general obligation debt issuance to help finance several sanitary sewer capital projects that have been presented by the authority's engineer, GHD. The first step of this would be for the Board of Commissioners to retain special bond counsel to assist with the administration of the debt issuance and some of the legal documents and filings that would have to be prepared in accordance with the bond or bank loan. Provided with your agenda is an engagement letter from Attorney Timothy Horseman of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurick to provide this service. The township has used Attorney Horseman's services for similar engagements in the past. There's also a conflict waiver because the firm does represent some private interests who conduct business with the township, but we've reviewed this matter and the township has staff has no objections to waiving the conflict in this manner because this engagement will not present an opportunity for conflict. Mr. Horseman is here this evening in case the board has any questions. Staff is recommending approval.
Mr. President, I've reviewed the engagement letter and the waiver of the conflict, and I concur with the staff that it's all in order and appropriate for this transaction.
Is there a motion? Moved and seconded. Any comments or discussion? Mr. Horseman, is there anything you'd like to say, or?
Just that we would love the opportunity to represent the township and the authority again. We served as bond counsel in 2018 and 2020, and we value and appreciate the relationship.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion by members of the board? Commissioner Rothrock.
I'm just curious about what are the projects that are to be funded with this bond?
Great question. Largely, it's to be determined, but there are there's a capital improvement plan that GHD has prepared and presented to the authority. So presumably several of the at least the intent is for this to be largely focused on the sanitary sewer side of the authority's mission as opposed to the stormwater side. But it would be for the upgrade of pump stations and the replacement of sanitary sewer mains and laterals in the areas that have been identified by GHD as being beyond their useful life. You're welcome.
Any other discussion? I think as part of there's an awareness that the bond and or the interest rate market is going up, and the township authority does probably 1.5 to 2 mini basin projects per year at a cost of $4 to $6 million per, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So we know that we're on the hook. The authority knows they're on the hook to do these projects. Might as well get the money for things that we know we're going to have to invest in the next 3 years at the lowest rate that you can. So, not going down anytime soon, it appears. So, any other discussion before we take the vote? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is the engagement of Chris Gibbons of Concord as financial advisor for the township and the Susquehanna Township Authority. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to the retention of bond counsel just considered in the prior action, The board also should engage a certified financial advisor to be the broker of record for the new debt issuance. Mr. Gibbons has provided that service for the township in the past, and provided with the agenda is a copy of the engagement letter from his firm and a tentative schedule for the financing. There's also been a paper handout provided to the board this evening that, at the pleasure of the board, I'd like to ask Mr. Gibbons to maybe walk through briefly. The recommended motion would be for the Board of Commissioners to approve the engagement of Mr. Gibbons to serve as financial advisor, but the board is also asked to consider, as part of the process to issue a request for proposals for the new debt, to provide direction to Mr. Gibbons, if he's engaged, as to the terms of the amortization schedule that we'd like to see with this new debt issuance, with the request for proposals that would be issued tomorrow. So I know there's a lot there, but I'd ask Mr. Gibbons maybe to answer any questions or to walk the board through what that handout might describe.
Great. Thank you, and it's nice to see you all. I will try to make it very brief. The handout that I put out, Dave put out. I will try to be brief. The handout that Dave put out in front of everybody, we could talk an hour. I know that probably can keep it more brief than that, so I'll try to do that. So the handout always starts out with an interest rate chart. As President Lynch had mentioned, interest rates have increased significantly in the last several months, as both inflation and the world events, and also the momentum of the Federal Reserve talking about increasing interest rates has put significant pressure on interest rates, and it does not appear at this point that interest rates are going to level off at any time. I know we all have our own opinions and impressions of where interest rates are, and in looking at this project now, it's partly driven by your collective opinion of where you think interest rates are going to go. If you think interest rates are going to stay where they are, well, then you have time to get the projects a little more in order. If you think interest rates are going to go up and you're going to do the projects anyway, well, the idea is to kind of do it sooner rather than later. So what I put together was several amortization schedules, debt service repayment schedules that appear on page 2 of my handout. The discussion we had at the combined committee of both the authority and the township commissioners of several weeks ago was a option 4, which is column 6 on my page. Essentially, the idea is a wraparound debt service structure. To give you a little bit of background on why and what that is, I would first start you with column 2. Column 2 is the existing sanitary sewer debt service. And as you can see, the payments stay at a level number of about $2.29 million through 2038. And then they're completely finished. So the idea is, can we put together a structure that allows for a lower budgetary impact, but then spreads the cost over users not just of current, but of future users of the system. So option 4 does that at a lower annual debt service cost than the other 3 options. The other 3 options are similar to home mortgages, where you pay principal and interest every year at the same rate. The option 4, column 6, is essentially where you're only paying interest until the existing debt service, as I identified in column 2, is paid off. So that effectively then you have $2.3 million to repay the principal on this new borrowing. So effectively what happens, I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but effectively what happens here is, instead of paying budgetarily a principal and interest payment, you only be paying an interest payment on this new borrowing, this $10 million borrowing. So the direction we were looking for was kind of, as discussed at the last meeting, as I mentioned, the joint committee meeting of the authority and the township, was column 6, option 4, the wraparound debt service that would increase the payments by approximately $400,000, significantly lower than the payments compared to the other 3 options. Yes.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, so column 2 is our existing sewer debt service.
Correct?
Without the $10 million bond issue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And option 4, the 20-year wraparound debt service, is our payment option with the $10 million
Exactly.
bond issue
Yes,
included.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification. Sorry about that. So we were looking for some type of direction from the board's perspective because, as Mr. Pabolka had indicated, our financing timeframe was accelerated to meet the interests of the members that were at that meeting to get to the market as quickly as possible. As Mr. Pabolka also mentioned, we're looking at both bank loan and bond issue financing. The bank loan request for proposals would go out tomorrow, and I would like, as a second point then, once we finish the repayment or amortization discussion, to quickly talk about scheduling and what might work for the commissioners.
I have a question. Excuse me. Option 4 involves paying the figure there, 2.4 million, represents the existing debt service plus the interest on the new borrowing. Is that
Correct.
what it is? Okay. All right, I understand. Thank you.
Clarification. So options 1 to 4, basically, as Commissioner Fleming stated, includes the current and then the $10 million, right?
Yes.
Now, and looking at, let's say comparing option 1 and 4, obviously with option 4, the debt payment is relatively stable, but you end up paying more. While option 1, there's an acceleration of payment. So is there a reason why we're not able to, let's say, more or less project that we can make higher payments to save money? Because the difference between option 1 and 4 is like what, roughly $6 million?
Yes. Want me to take this? Okay. So think of it like your home budget. We would all like to have 10 or 15-year mortgages, but within a budget, we can't do it. So what we end up doing is taking out a mortgage for a longer period of time. It's no different here. We know that the township's under certain financial constraints, and although it does cost an additional interest expense, the argument to that additional interest expense is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's an equitability argument that because you're putting those improvements in place now, the sewer users in 20 years will still enjoy the improvements that were put in place now so that they can equitably share in the cost of that project too. And that's typically why people use the option 4. Understood,
but what I'm looking at here is that, and I understand obviously we have to manage our money, our finances over time, right? I know, like, if you, I'm looking at the numbers, it's possible to, okay, we can budget for this. It's more constant, so we're not pressured financially. But is there anything in our financial standing that will not allow us to make higher payments over time so that we save on interest rate?
No, there's not.
Okay.
That's a policy, strictly a policy decision.
Right. I
Yes.
would add to Mr. I would add to Mr. Gibbons' point that part of the consideration ought to be rate setting by the township authority on the 20-year wraparound debt service. That would give them the ability to absorb the payment for the interest and ultimately the principal on the new issue with a more modest rate adjustment to ratepayers than might otherwise be required with a higher annual debt service. So it is something that I'd like to present to the authority on their meeting on May 3rd. And if there is a strong feeling or consensus of the authority to go with a different amortization schedule, then we could do that by issuing an amendment to the RFP that would be issued on the bank loan. So it would, even though we're asking the board to give Mr. Gibbons some direction on which schedule you'd prefer to see in that RFP initially. If the township authority says, well, we're okay with raising rates more in order to pay the debt off earlier, or however they decide to approach this, then we could do that. We could proceed that route. We would just amend that request for proposals that was issued and send that amendment out to the prospective respondents in time for them to get their responses in for consideration by ordinance at the May 26th meeting of the board.
Okay, so in short, basically, in order for us to manage the sewer rates, option 4 is the best because that will not result to a drastic, if at all,
Yes,
increase.
exactly. Yes.
Option 1, while it saves us, it may require us to raise rates.
You hit the nail on the head, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, again, just like a home mortgage, think about it. If you take a 15-year term out, you save a heck of a lot of interest, but what else do you have to give up to save that interest? It's the same thing.
Just comparing, just for the folks who don't have the benefit of seeing this, comparing the payments once you get to 2025, we will be saving roughly, or the authority rather, will be saving roughly $600,000 a year in payments. And even with option 4, the 20-year wraparound service, we will only do an additional 4 years of payments. As opposed, 5 years of payments as opposed to option 1. So, and we're paying, I'm sorry, Carl? Well, I'm seeing a payment in 2038, 39, 40, 41, 42 in option 4 as opposed to option 1. 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. Right, yes. So it seems sound to me. Option 3, for the edification of those, it's also a 25-year level debt service, but then we're paying through 2047, whereas with option 4, we stop paying in 2042. So
Correct.
So thank you.
All right, we don't need to vote on this, but Chris would need a sense of what.
I think we do need to vote, Mr. President, on the engagement of Mr. Gibbons, and we haven't had a motion or a second yet.
That's true, but we're talking about the direction of the loan.
Yeah, the direction, no. Yeah, right.
It's what. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think we need to keep the rates as reasonable as we can. And this gives us that opportunity, at least at this point, until we need to borrow some more. And then we'll have to deal with that at that time.
All right. Anybody violently oppose option 4? With the building in some of the flexibility that we could exercise after the meeting of the authority's budget committee and our own budget committee, Mr. Fleming. So if we can build in that kind of flexibility, that'd be great. Do you understand what we're talking about here,
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that enough? Do you need anything else
Getting
from us?
close. Just one last thing. I know I'm running closer to my hour than my 5 minutes, so I'll go quicker now. Page 4. Page 4. Take the microphone away. Okay. The Sixers already started, so. The schedule is we would put an RFP out on tomorrow. We would have the RFP back by the 19th. There's a suggestion that we have a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on the 20th, which is Friday the 20th, to review the proposals that were received and compare that to the bond market. If the payments, and all we care about here is that's what we do when we compare bank loan and bond issue, what gets you lower payments, a bank loan or bond issue. And if we have, we would have the summary together for discussion on the 20th. If there is a clear consensus to do a bank loan, we would look to enact the borrowing ordinance on the 26th of May, so long as the commissioners are in agreement with that schedule. If we look at a bond issue, then we need to kind of, I hate to say a little more discussion, but that might be the case. The first question is, would it be possible to have a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on the 20th to review the proposals?
It's a busy week for some of us. I think in the interest of, we met via Zoom, 2 weeks ago? Yeah. 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 So you're good with that?
Great. Okay. Excellent. Now, if it's a bond issue, Tim, do you want to talk about kind of how we're going to bring in the bond issue scheduling?
Sure. Yeah, so as Chris indicated, if the direction is to go with a bank loan, we could be here on May 26th to present an ordinance to authorize the bank loan. If you want to instead, get the proposals back and you decide to do a bond issue, I think we have it on here for June 26th, or excuse me, June 23rd. I think the township might have a meeting 2 weeks before that, so we might even be able to do it 2 weeks before that. But at that point, you'd need to, of course, engage an underwriter, an investment banking firm. In the past, you've worked with RBC Capital Markets. There are other options, of course, but you'd have to engage an underwriting firm to assist with the sale of the bonds. But as far as the process, we could, again, be in front of you with an ordinance to authorize a bond issue, either on June 26th or at the meeting, or June 23rd, I should say, or the meeting 2 weeks before that, whichever the township prefers.
I'm sorry, I apologize if you already addressed this. At what point can we lock in the interest rate just to mitigate
Risk, interest rate risk. With bank loan financing proposals, you could lock it in on the 26th of May. We will get the proposals that quickly. And that was the goal of accelerating a financing schedule to get what we have right now. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
They said the Fed Reserve may pump up rates twice in May, so that could be
Well,
a significant change.
there could be a change. Nobody knows. And, have those rates, those proposed rate increases already been baked into the rates? Don't know that either. Probably have been, though. So it's kind of more of what the Fed says about future at that point. I think, hear you loud and clear. I think the point is we're trying to hustle as quickly as we can to get something in front of you as quickly as we can.
So, do you need anything else from
I'm finished. Yes.
I'm trying to be brusque.
No, I don't need anything else. Thank you. I think I got the direction I need.
All right. And Dave, you can work with them on the flexibility and keep the board informed through the budget committee. Okay. In terms of putting the cart before the horse, thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
And going through those issues with us and the urgency of it. We also need to engage formally with Mr. Chris Gibbons, if the board is so inclined, to be our financial advisor on this issue, on this acquisition of funds for sewer projects. So is there a motion? Moved and seconded by Commissioner Falona. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. Thank you for your support. You'll be hearing a lot of us next month or so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is a proposal from HRG to update our pavement management plan. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Commissioners requested a proposal to update a pavement condition assessment that was done by HRG in 2017. The assessment in 2017 was commissioned to evaluate the condition of the approximate 127-mile road network in Susquehanna Township to determine the degradation of the roadway and to begin to develop a capital improvement program to repair and rehabilitate some of that road network. Because the study is over 5 years old, it's recommended that it be refreshed and begin to inform the composition of a capital improvement program beginning in 2023. So the assessment that's provided with the agenda, or the proposal provided with the agenda, rather, is a somewhat pared down version of the assessment that was done in 2017, since really it's just a refresher of that. It would include a reassessment of the road network and also a evaluation of a capital improvement plan that would ultimately be reviewed and approved by the Board of Commissioners. In addition to HRG, staff also received a proposal from another firm, but is recommending that the engagement be awarded to HRG. The total amount of the contract would be $52,500 as a lump sum, and it's recommended that this be taken out of the township's allocation of American Rescue Plan Act funding. Mr. Greenlee's here this evening, of course, if the board has any specific questions on the proposal. Otherwise, staff is recommending that the board approve the engagement this evening.
All right, is there a motion?
Also move, Mr. President, for acceptance of the proposal from HRG to update our pavement management plan.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Before we get to the board members, Mr. Greeley, do you have anything you'd like to add or flesh out for us?
No, thanks, Mr. President. Manager Pobelka pretty much hit the nail on the head with his summation of our proposal and what's being proposed under the scope of work. Again, it is a refresher, so you'll get a rescan of the roadways and then recalibration of the paver software model, and then a work plan development. So.
Mr. Rothrock?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the other bid was.
$52,500.
The other bid.
The robotics pavement assessment methodology is significantly less than what is proposed by HRG. It was approximately $10,000. It depends on the lane miles that would be assessed. So it would be between $8,000 and $10,000 when it was all said and done. But really, all that we'd be getting in that scenario would be the raw data. It would be incumbent on township staff and likely HRG and the Board of Commissioners ultimately to work through that data and add the narrative component, the subjective component of the road assessment to be able to inform a capital improvement program. And they also use a methodology that varies significantly from the one that's that was employed for the 2017 assessment. So we would have to do some translation, if you will, of the raw data in order to be able to more accurately define a degradation curve and get a full picture of the degradation of the road network if we were to go with robotics. Really, essentially, a component of the HRG scope is the same, and that's a rescan of the road network, is the same thing that is presented to be done by robotics. It's just the additional elements of their scope of work that we would have to find another way to fill in the blanks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? I'd just like to stress what we've stressed before is that, once this plan is done, it doesn't sit on a shelf and not be put into action. And I know you're going to take care of that with our Public Works Director. It's really important. No other comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
When do you think that'll be finished, Alex?
I don't actually. The proposal generally has a schedule in it, but this one doesn't. So I will need to get with Ryan Hostetter, who's the group manager for this department, and I can get you a tentative date probably at the next commissioners meeting.
As I recall, though, it would have been done. It will be done in time for the budget
Correct.
preparation.
Yes.
For next year. Okay, thank you. Next up, authorization of purchase order to National Fitness Campaign LP to install a fitness court at Veterans Park. Mr. Knaus.
Thank you, Commissioners. As you're aware, we received a grant in the amount of $30,000 from the National Fitness Campaign last year for the eventual purchase of a fitness court that we have identified to go into Veterans Park. We're at the point, at this point in time, to hopefully move forward with that acquisition. We have also engaged with UPMC at this point in time to become a partner on the installation and purchase of the equipment. We are now just waiting to hear back from them and to go into further engagement. We have engaged them and asked for an amount of $150,000 to go towards the overall installation and purchase of the equipment at this point in time. National Fitness Campaign, our challenge is actually the sole proprietor as well of the equipment. Mr. Miller's office has reviewed their sole source documentation and has confirmed that it's acceptable. Mr. Miller?
He speaks the truth.
So at this point in time, we're looking for authorization to provide a purchase order to the National Fitness Campaign to secure our purchase and to secure the price so it doesn't keep going up as shipping costs do.
All right, there's a request for a motion. Is there one?
I also move, Mr. President, for approval of this authorization to work with National Fitness Campaign to install a fitness court at Veterans Park.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Commissioner Falona. Any discussion? I may have missed it, but what's the LP stand for? First I saw that, I was thinking Lower Paxton.
Limited partner.
Limited partnership. Gotcha.
Just a quick question. So, and I really admire your tenacity in getting grants and sponsors. So, what's our confidence that UPMC will partner with us in this one?
I don't know. It just started.
Okay.
We just started. I mean, my initial outreach to them, I supplied them with the video of the equipment and some of the similar documentation that you have in front of you. The person I was in contact with was excited about the project. That's all I got at this point in time. So there's excitement there. They didn't know the price until afterwards, but and my hope is to get into further engagement with them, even if it's something that we can work something out over a multi-year period. It's something we can discuss, and we would probably be bringing back to the commissioners as well if other arrangements need to be made.
Cool. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the line striping contract with D.E. Gamel, Inc. for $27,051.21.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll sub in for Mr. Bragonier, who's hopefully closing on his new home in the next day. Provided with your agenda is a proposal from D.E. Gemmel Incorporated to do the pavement line striping for the township roads this year. This was a competitive bid contract awarded by the Capital Region Council of Governments. The lists of streets that are proposed to be restriped this year are included in the narrative in the agenda. I won't necessarily read them, but of course, Travis Meese with the Public Works Department is here in case there's any specific questions. The budget includes an allocation of $45,000 from the liquid fuels budget to do the line striping, so we are under budget by a significant amount. We are, however, currently obtaining pricing for some additional road markings that may be warranted for some faded areas in the township that we might dip into this account for in the future as well. But so far, we are well under budget, and the recommendation is that the Board of Commissioners approve the proposal, which is included with your agenda this evening.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. President. There is a section. There is a section that discusses work schedule and that the work will be done mostly on weekdays. But is there an actual, should we approve this, is there an actual schedule of approximately how long the project will take or anything like that?
Mr. Meese, you want to?
Basically, it'll take approximately 2 days to do, 2-3 days. If we do everything on the list, then it takes us approximately a whole week. We reduce the list down a little bit, basically just to get the areas that are the worst. And possibly next year, jump onto them, and if any of the other ones need repainted again as well, we'll jump on that again as well.
Okay, so about 3 days to do everything that's included in our narrative here. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And when will it begin?
As soon as everything's signed, then we'll get back to us on that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is appointments. We have a couple on the Human Relations Commission. Mr. Hisrow.
Yes, thank you. On the first one, I have the pleasure to move, and I fully endorse Denisha Dunbar Yancey, a Third Ward resident who I know personally, and in fact, I asked her to consider being a member of this the HRC, and she graciously agreed. So I would like to move tonight for her approval to be a member of that board. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been so moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We also have an appointment request consideration for Kristen Herman to the HRC for a term that would expire same time, December 31st, 2024. Is there a motion?
I would make a motion to appoint Kristen Herman to the HRC.
All right, it's moved by Commissioner Rabarchak.
You all have her resume. She's exceptionally qualified. And she had actually applied some time ago, and unfortunately, her application had cracks, but Mr. Bolton was able to resurrect it. So here we are.
Very good. And we do have a second, right? Okay. The second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Time for commissioner comments. Can't mention the NFL draft, though.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I just have one colleague talk about roadways tonight and road surfaces. There's an issue on 6th Street between the 38 and 3700 block on the road underneath the 81 overpass. It's not your average pothole. It's severely degraded, and I know a resident had reported it some time ago, but it really needs to be addressed. Somebody's going to lose a wheel.
It's on our it's on your list.
It was reported like months ago, so. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, let's move it up the list.
All right. Anybody else?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I wanted to highlight something. It's something on my mind due to one of the agenda but it wasn't necessarily about what we were considering. Just a general reminder and something I want to elevate at this point. So, in the proclamation proclaiming May 15th through the 21st, Police Week, I read off the following phrase: "Celebrate the rich diversity and cultural heritage that makes our community thrive." And that's right. Susquehanna Township is a rich, diverse place. I think it's why most, if not all of us, choose to live here, to be among people who, don't necessarily look like us or worship like us, and be enriched by those people. I just want to keep, our budget is around $18 million a year in the township. A lot of that is personnel, and a lot of those are fixed costs that we don't, there isn't much wiggle room there. But I would urge us all to keep at the top of mind the fact that this is a diverse township, and that our tax base is diverse. So when we select businesses to provide professional services, to provide a variety of things that we need to run, it's important to engage, to the extent possible, minority business enterprises and women business enterprises. And I think that's something that we have to keep at the top of mind, specifically for our township, and try to make every effort to do that. I know there is a bit of an imbalanced business climate in South Central Pennsylvania as it relates to that, but I think it deserves extra effort given where we are and who we are, quite frankly. So I just wanted to elevate that tonight and make sure we try to keep that at the top of mind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well put. Any other discussion? All right. Do we have a motion? I think we're all done here, Fred. Hint, note to Fred. Moved and seconded by Commissioner Hissero. He beat you. You can put that in the minutes, Kathy. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're out of here.